Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 352nd take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. Year 2026 officially kicks off tonight. We had our top 10 cigars of 2025 show last week. Check it out on a replay. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel as well as on Facebook. And you can always download any of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio. So check out the top 10 cigars of 2025 last week on an instant replay. But for tonight, we have our 352nd take. We're so excited for you all to be here. But before we get to formal introductions of our guests of honor, we are going to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is brought to you by Drew Estate. Drew Estate has announced the Liga Privada H99 Churrasco exclusive for Cigars International. Drew Estate is proud to announce the Liga Privada H99 Churrasco exclusively for Cigars International, expanding the acclaimed H99 Connecticut Corojo portfolio with the structure and focus. The 6x50 box press Churrasco delivers a bolder expression while restraining and retaining the balance, flavor, and refinement and complexity that's expected of a Liga Privada H99. The name Churrasco, a nod to fire tradition and bold flavor, perfectly reflects the spirit of this exclusive release. Designed around the distinctive H99 Connecticut grown Corojo wrapper, the box press Churrasco highlights the wrapper's natural spice, sweetness, and earthy undertones. Beneath the wrapper lies a meticulously constructed blend of premium tobacco. So check out Cigars International today for the exclusive from Drew Estate. And welcome, everyone. As I mentioned before, this is our 352nd take. And if you're listening to us live on Facebook, as we do almost every Sunday night at 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern, our video broadcast is always courtesy of our friends at Foundation Cigar Company. Nick Melillo is a well-known cigar maker that is from Connecticut, and he has been part of the premium cigar industry for a really long time. He is the founder and owner of Foundation Cigars, which produces a range of high-quality, handcrafted cigars. His values consist of quality, consistency, balance, and flavor. Check out FoundationCigars.com today for more information, including some of their latest releases. And if you're listening to us on podcasts, wherever you download audio podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. Our audio broadcast tonight is courtesy of Gran Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. Check out wherever you listen to podcasts, courtesy of Gran Habano Cigars. And welcome, everybody. As I mentioned before, 352nd take here. We're going to introduce our guests of honor tonight, which is brought to you by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living united. It's Mr. Josh Habursky, of the premium cigar industry. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Bear, can you hear me? You were breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, I got you.
Good stuff. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on the show.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you so much. I'm so excited to have you back on the show. It's been a while, and thank you so much for joining us again. How have things been going there in our nation's capital and at PCA headquarters?
Very busy. We wanted to start the year off strong. Last year, 2025 was, monumental in a few senses, with new programs, new initiatives, and we kind of wanted to keep the ball rolling. And we have had already in the 11 days of 2026 some announcements and some new announcements that will be coming out shortly, as we are now in full campaign mode, 4 months into or 4 months away from the trade show.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that we're a little bit more than I guess we're about right at 100 days, maybe it's got to be less though at this point, right?
Yeah.
So, really, really excited to, and we're going to get into all this, but really excited to talk about the upcoming trade show. But I haven't really had a chance to also kind of rehash last year's very successful trade show with you as well. and we'll get to that. But from all the comings and goings and everything, I kind of wanted to kick off the show. I thought this was interesting. Saw that you recently traveled to Florida International University to, I guess, add another degree or a certificate to your continuing list of academic accolades to go with all your other accomplishments in life. I mean, what's going on at FIU?
So I'm a continuing learner, never stop learning, and this is something that actually, FIU for two reasons was my selection. I've always wanted to get my doctorate, but made the decision after successfully launching a program in their hospitality school, which we piloted last November, which is renewed for this year. Got to go to campus and work with their administration. And the program that I'm enrolled in currently is a doctorate of business administration with a concentration in hospitality. Javier Estadas of Altadis, actually, I think he's in his third year of this program. So I get to talk to Javier about it and said, look, I know you have a crazy busy schedule. Is this doable? I've always wanted to do this, but I'm worried about interference with the day job. And he's like, look, they kind of created it so that it's focused on the weekends. You're able to maintain everything, and it's really centered on a research project. And my research project is going to be on the cigar industry, and really looking at what prompts people to purchase a cigar in different mediums. So that's kind of the
Okay.
underpinnings of what my dissertation will be on.
Wow. Well, I mean that's great that you get to use your quote unquote day job to kind of help your academic career there. Um, but gosh, man, like I was just thinking about this, like all the time that you've all the time you commit to so many other things, and then here we are looking at looking at this. But I'm really looking forward to 3 years from now to having Dr. Joshua Habursky as the executive director and CEO of PCA. So
So,
that'll be a cool thing.
so am I.
Can we get you a white coat? I know that's not the same thing, but we got to do something
Something like that.
a little bit obnoxious, but taking it seriously at the same time because I mean it's going to be a huge deal.
I think one of the other reasons why I'm excited about this program is when I'm fighting and arguing with all the anti-tobacco groups that all have, DR in front of their name. That's really the reason why, I'm so excited to put the DR in front of my name. Like my friends, family, and that, like, it's another, accolade, and I don't want to diminish it, but it's to me like the whole being called doctor. It's going to be for the people that wouldn't respect that on the other side of our political or our advocacy
Yeah.
issues. And even in the first classes I had this weekend, I'm learning about methodologies that I can attack or question the results of some of the things that are out there. And some of these studies that the anti groups are putting out there aren't rooted in the fundamentals of research and appropriate design. So I look forward to being able to take some of this new skill set and apply it in the everyday.
I want for the purposes of our audience, and I know that we've kind of explored this in previous episodes where you've been on, Josh, but I think it's just really impressive, especially when you list it out. Washington and Jefferson College, Georgetown University, London School of Economics, Harvard University, Cornell University, University of Pennsylvania. That's Penn for you unsophisticated fools out there. Um, an adjunct professor of Graduate School for Political Management at George Washington University. Um, Another faculty role and other courses from West Virginia University's Reed College of Media. Um, and now a PhD in hospitality from FIU. I'm serious, Josh. Your resume reads like an Aaron Sorkin character. Um, and I have to ask because I have to be the first person to get ahead of it if one day this actually happens. Are you planning on running for president one day?
I'm not running for political office. Folks have asked me, what do I want to do in my career? And like, obviously, I'm in the best place possible, being a cigar enthusiast at PCA. And, at bare minimum, I want to be here for 10 years doing exactly what I'm doing. But, if I get to my 50s and 60s, I would love to be a dean of a college or a university and, kind of focus on those things. So, I think that that's my trajectory. I love the practical world. I love kind of, I teach one class a year as an adjunct, and you kind of get the best of both worlds. But with PCA, I'm getting to do things that we talk about in theory in the real world. So I initially wanted to be a political science professor. That's what I studied, and wanted to get the experience of advocacy and lobbying first. And now I've kind of fell in love with that and don't have any intention of leaving that. Even with the elevation as the CEO of PCA, I'm doing a lot of management, administration, procedures, new programs, but I'm still maintaining, the FDA, White House, and congressional portfolio. So I don't do as much state advocacy as I did when I was originally hired.
Sure.
Glenn does a lot of that, and I coordinate. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I'm not in the weeds on a lot of those things unless it's a major action that involves litigation or an impact on our budget.
Well, to really bastardize it, you're not familiar with the nuts and bolts, but you still know how to pull a wrench down,
Yep.
So, but I think that, I mean, I was kind of reviewing that, Josh, and I think that's, for one, it reminds me of an Aaron Sorkin character, but it's like, I mean, that it just really goes and speaks to your love of learning, your love of knowledge, and how you're reinvesting in yourself as you want to do the best by the industry, which I think is fantastic. So, um, we're all the way into we're a long ways into the show already and everything, and I know you won't be able to join me, but I thought it would be wonderful if you pick my cigar for me. I have a hunch I know which one you're going to pick, but maybe I'll be wrong here. So I've got a couple of things for you to choose from here, um, and and then I'll light up and we'll go from there. So I have a Blackwork Studio Intergalactic from Oveja Negra Brands. Was on my honorable mention list last year. I also have a La Flor Dominicana 50th anniversary of the TAA available as well. And then last but not least, I have Tatuaje's PCA exclusive. And this one's got some age on. This one's from 2023, by the way. So we've got coming up on
Definitely,
3 years.
definitely the Tatuaje. I actually smoked the Tatuaje latest Monster series and the Sex Tooth before coming on to the show. I'm in my apartment now, so I can't smoke, but I was in the office just before this and went back to back with those two cigars. So I am unashamed to admit that I'm a huge Tatuaje fan. Well, all of the brands that you listed are good. I mean, LFD, I was hoping my package arrived at the office, but I recently bought from Scott Regina the latest TAA of LFD, the Apollina, which I think is a
Nice.
phenomenal cigar.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was kind of leading the witness a little bit here with this, but you could have surprised me here, but yeah, I definitely put that one in there just specifically for you tonight in honor of you tonight. So, happy to light it up with my ST DuPont signature lighter from ST DuPont. Fantastic. This is the Biggie lighter, so it's that flat flame Biggie side. So there's the Slimmy and the Biggie. This is the Biggie with the flat flame. Um, are you a collector of any of ST DuPont's products, Josh?
I have one, but I lose lighters and cutters so much. So like I carry the cheapest ones. Like I buy these by the hundred on Amazon because I leave them in hotels, and like I usually have three or four of them. But usually when I'm in the office or in my apartment, I have an ST. I have a few of the nicer things if I'm trying to, if we have a big meeting at the office and a guest and you kind of want to impress them a little bit, I probably won't use my knockoff. This isn't even a Bic brand. This is lower than.
Hey, let's not knock Bic. They were a finalist for Accessory of the Year from Tobacco Business a few years ago. So,
Yeah, they got a lot of functional products that are good.
but yeah, yeah, I hear that. I take some I take some cheap lighters just to make sure I get through because I usually don't check bags and I
Yep.
travel. I don't travel as much. I hate saying I travel quite a bit to anyone in the cigar industry because that's just not. I travel so little compared to everyone else, but it's more than I would say average. I travel about once a month, and I'm always feeling like someone's going to snag a lighter. But my favorite thing to do is Danila Fallon of Quality Importers gifted me a soft flame lighter from Zycar at last year's PCA, and it's my favorite thing to take on the take because I get it always gets pulled to the side when I go through security, and they're like, "Oh, this is a torch lighter." I'm like, "No, it's not," and it's my favorite thing to just tell them and like watch them light it, and they're so disappointed because I feel like they want to take it every single time.
Yeah. You occasionally get the TSA agents are like, "Oh, you can't bring a cutter," and then yeah, I have like the area saved where it says you can bring cigar cutters as long as they're not like open-ended knives. So like I love messing with them on that. Normally I'm not a pain, but when it comes to what you can and cannot do in the cigar industry, I'm going to fight for that. So I take it as an opportunity to educate the TSA on the proper
Yeah,
rules for cigar consumers.
absolutely. Well, Josh, let's get into it, man. We're really excited. I mean, we've like we said, we're less than 100 days away from the PCA trade show. And normally there's a lot of we're going to get to it as well too. There's a lot of ground to cover since the last time you've been on the show, and there's a lot of ground to cover that's happened in the past, even a few months and everything, and like you said, even the last few days. But everyone wants to hear about the upcoming trade show at New Orleans. This is year two. Um, so let's reflect on a moment on last year's tremendous success. I don't think it's been a year. It's been almost a year, Josh. I haven't met anyone who attended or heard about it or was there that had anything truly negative to say about it. There's nitpicks and criticisms and constructive criticisms that can be thrown around, but I think overall it was a glowing success from my perspective as well as everyone that I've talked to, manufacturers, retailers, um, even the city of New Orleans. I feel like it thought it was a success. But I mean, from where you sat, could it have gone any better?
Yeah, there's certainly little things that, it wasn't perfect. Any event that's that size, you're going to have little details that are or issues here and there. I mean, we had nearly 6,500 people in attendance over the course of those 3 days, and I think that the team did a really good job in preparation. We listened to a lot of the feedback, from people in the past. I absorbed a lot of the cigar media. I sat in the chat rooms and kind of said, all right, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to be aware of for future years. And I think we implemented a lot of those changes, and the board of directors have really given and empowered us to make a lot of those decisions on the fly. We're reporting to them on the big ticket items, whereas, I think in previous years you had a lot of, all right, do we need to have coffee at this event? And it's like, no, like that isn't a decision that the board of directors needs to make. We need to make that, and we need to leave the big decisions to them. So I think that has worked well. And, as we look at 2025, there's certainly lessons learned and ways that we can amplify. We know if it's something that's not broken, let's not try to fix it. So, like that outdoor party, you're going to see another iteration of that. Just, amplify it, like
Yeah.
add a few other details there. So, I think that's the stage that we're at. Also, we had a smaller trade show for us on the cigar footprint in Dubai. And those 2 days were really eye-opening for me of kind of some of the events that were done in the evening and packaging together an overall experience. The foremost part of the event is the trade show floor, the B2B aspect, but networking, food and beverage, basic hospitality, that is overall affects the experience. And, we started with a bang with the governor welcoming everyone and,
Yeah.
assuaging concerns about smoking. I think it really, that set the tone that first day. I've told the team it's going to be hard to replicate the enthusiasm from that first day that we had in 2025 in the new year.
Yeah, we love telling this story that the Cigar Coop Coalition, that the cigar that the governor lit up was intended for you.
Yes.
And you were kind enough to pass it along when he needed a cigar to smoke while he gave his opening remarks. And uh, um, don't worry, Ben has said he still owes you a cigar for it, so we'll make good on that this year as well.
So
So,
they gave me one in North Carolina. I smoked
oh,
the
that's
open.
right.
So I got it. And the governor was phenomenal, and it happened that that was the only cigar I had on me at the time, and I didn't hesitate at all. I'm like, you know what, he wants the light on stage, like that was not scripted. He could have came up there and gave a 5 minute stump speech. He is really invested in the show's success, in the association's success. And this year, I'm actually going a day early to Louisiana with a couple of our board members to have dinner at the governor's mansion in Baton Rouge. So that kind of goes to show you the level of commitment and enthusiasm that he has for the industry.
Now, we don't have to get into the political weeds, but listen, this is your area of like and so I know you're going to navigate this question pretty well here. But there's no secret that there's no love lost between the mayor of New Orleans and the governor of Louisiana. And given that, there are a lot of questions going into this trade show about the ability to smoke, and giving money to a municipality that clearly doesn't like our industry, with some of the laws that they've put into place and things like that. I know that that was some of our concerns. Again, the event was phenomenal, as we've already said, and we certainly felt welcome. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I wonder, did that have a lot more to do with pressures from the state, or was that truly a olive branch between the local and state government, extending this olive branch to the PCA and making it a wonderful event for us?
I think New Orleans in the administration, and there's some political trade winds, changing there, but you have a lot of people at the local level that appreciate the trade show, the amount of economic development that we bring to the city for that period of time. I can tell you the convention center, their team has been phenomenal to work with, and we've that relationship that we've had with the convention center and the governor, we've taken some of those lessons, and we're already preparing for 2027 in Las Vegas. So I'm going to do everything in my power and anything I can to make it so that we have that same experience in Las Vegas, which if you look at the just pure economics, in New Orleans we're a larger trade show, in Vegas we're a smaller trade show. So
Sure.
there's differences there, and we want to set expectations for all attendees that they're going to be welcome no matter where they go. And like if there's obstacles in place, we need to navigate those. And that's like, I think one of the best decisions we made was contracting out and having these after hour spots, these large after hour spots. And
Yeah.
like even from that, we're this year we're switching one of the locations to be more convenient, more accessible, and have better food and beverage offerings. So, it's not going to just, we throw things against the wall and this is the way that it's going to be for the foreseeable future. We're going to find what works, apply it, and if things need finessed a little bit, we're going to do that.
So it's funny because I didn't think I'd be asking you this question a year ago. I mean, I had no expectations going into this. There's a 10-year gap between the last time the PCA, then IPCPR, was in New Orleans, and all I heard was stories. I had nothing to go on, so I kind of was going in with an open mind of expectation, but I had no idea that I was going to be asking you this question a year later. I mean, I'm not trying to jinx anyone here, Josh, but let's just say that the trade show is as successful as last year's in New Orleans. How do you now approach, or what do you do to prepare? You said you're already making preparations. What are you doing to set up a return to Las Vegas to be as engaging, as exciting, after back-to-back years of New Orleans just blowing it out of the park, after 10 years of being in Las Vegas. And frankly, like as well run as those last few shows were in Las Vegas, I think a lot of people were ready for a change. I think it was getting a little stale. Um, and it certainly opened the door to retailers who probably hadn't been to the show in years. And I know the question's kind of getting lost in my rambling here, but how do you make preparations for that? And I know you guys are preparing for a great show, so there's no reason to think why it wouldn't be better than last year's. But let's just say as successful. I mean, that's still great expectations, but how do you curb those going into 2027?
I think you got to build some experiences or activations that have that kind of wow factor. Um, you know, and I posted a picture on social media. It's no surprise to folks. I went to the UFC Apex. Is there going to be some installation in 2027 at the UFC Apex? Possibly. Is there going to be something at F1 Experience? Possibly. I think looking at certain brand partnerships that align with the values of the association, I think first and foremost, we're not going to go to places or venues that aren't comfortable with premium cigars and cigar consumers. And, I think looking at 2027, we're going to be in the updated hall in the Vegas Convention Center. So that's already a good sign for us in having a good experience. But I think those activations and recognizing that, when the show floor hours end, the obligations of the PCA to build a good experience don't end. We need to facilitate some of that stuff. So I think that our mindset has changed in that. And like I've told our team of like, look, if this is a host hotel, we need to make sure that we have ample areas for people to smoke. If we're contracting with a hotel, they need to be prepared, and we need to have, if they're not supplying them, we need to supply ashtrays. We want to be good stewards. We don't want to make a mess. And that's how
Mhm.
you build long-term relationships with your partners in this, where they want to have you back. And like I think that Vegas, they're going through a kind of a tumultuous time with revenues being down, and there's going to be some venues there that are hungry to partner with an association like ours to do an event, as
Yeah.
well as some of these larger corporate partners. Part of my day today is identifying ways that we can partner with recognizable brands. A lot of that's in the sports side of things. Some of it's in, the luxury space, and doing those types of things that is where I get the wow factor, where, somebody goes and let's say, for instance, we had, even if it's a smaller event for, select group of sponsors, and they got to go to the UFC Apex and, take pictures and, roll around, or we do a mock fight or something. That to me, people will be talking about that, and it's not your run of the mill, like, the nacho bar experience. I remember you guys talking about it, and that I am guarding against having the conversation about the highlight being shitty nachos at an event. So
Okay, fair enough. I got. You look. We already highlighted your academic resume, so I know you're smarter than me, Josh, already. So you've probably thought about this, but I'll throw one at you. Um, if you could organize an activation event at Las Vegas Golden Knights practice where we're able to smoke at the rink while watching them practice, I'm just saying it would be super ass cool. Just putting
that
it
would be
out
pretty
there.
cool.
Just putting
I'm
it
a
out
big
there.
hockey fan as
So,
well.
and that would be a little nod to former to your predecessor, Scott Pierce.
Yeah,
So the hockey fan that he is. So, but that would be super cool. I know for a lot of folks, and I think it would get a lot of people from the East Coast. There's always that part of the conversation is getting those East Coast retailers to attend the PCA in Las Vegas. It's a long way for them to travel, things like that. A lot of
yeah,
hockey fans on the East Coast. Um, so anyway, food for thought. Just throwing one out there. I give out free ideas every now and then and everything. But
absolutely.
so looking at this coming up, going back to this year's trade show, schedule was recently released and everything. Couple things stood out to me, but I gotta tackle this one thing. There was it's just in one particular spot. Looks like Padron has its slot in the opening ceremony, um, event day, and I noticed that there wasn't specifically a hand rolled segment outlined. Am I leading to believe that we will have a hand rolled segment about Padron? Is that what that time slot is for?
We will have a hand rolled segment for sure. That's a staple of the first day. Hand rolled will roll out, who they've selected for that. So, I'll wait and won't preempt their announcement on a lot of that. I know that there's conversations even this week of what that rollout will look like. I think day one slots, we have some very ambitious ideas of speakers and panels, and that's really the next 2 weeks is formalizing those things. I mean, I have said in principle there is a vast network within the cigar industry of celebrities, of thinkers, thought leaders, people with business best practices that we can get to come to the show to speak, and view it as an honor. We don't need to be spending $75,000 for speakers. So we're working within our network again, and that's where some of those finalizations have to take place. I mean, it's one thing to, donate $5,000 to a charity of a celebrity, or, a chef, a celebrity chef, for instance. But, I'm committed to, making sure that the resources of the association are best spent in the areas of advocacy, education, development for resources for both retailers and manufacturers. And I don't think, given all the factors that we have, that, we pay for speakers for that. So I expect to have some announcements on that agenda. We have a trade show committee meeting this Tuesday, and we'll firm up some details. But I will say that your logic holds some value.
Fair enough. So, this kind of goes into, like from the time that you started with your time that you started with PCA and started attending this trade show, to last year, you know, um, where these opening sessions have garnered so much attention and so much praise in the last couple of years specifically, I would say, or been some of the highest of the highlights and everything. Um, when from where you started and saw that opening session to where it is today, like what has been the biggest, what has been the biggest difference is such a cliche question, but what impact has been seen by you the most from the time you started till now?
I think really enthusiasm that sets the tone for the entire trade show. If it's a swing and a miss on day one, it kind of affects people and how they operate through the trade show. If people have a good experience and have a good opening party, and, I think this year it's going to be parties plural. Um, you know, that will set the tone for the buying portion. People are in a better mood. They feel confident in their association, in their industry, and they feel part of something. They feel part of a community. And I think the community aspect is very important. Yes, we have responsibility as staff and as the association to facilitate some of this stuff. But, there's some self accountability for retailers and manufacturers to build a trade show with us that is, correlates with the industry itself. The United States is the largest market for premium cigars in the world. I repeat that phrase over, especially when I go over to Europe. I love messing with them. They're a fraction of the premium cigar market in the United States. And, obviously you have the manufacturing base in Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, and Honduras, and we're looking at how we tie that in. That we depend on those countries and Costa Rica and all globally, to produce these cigars, but consumption and the import of premium cigars is the most vast in the United States. So how do we build programming around that connects all of those factors and give the retailers a sense of pride in the industry that they work for? To me, that's one of my biggest success measures, if you will, for the trade show itself. But I mentioned that accountability factor. That's kind of what I go into a lot of these sponsorship meetings and say, and a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want to do 5 grand. Can I do 2,500? And you tell people like, look, this is the overall experience. There's a lot of bar tabs and a lot of dinners that exceed $5,000. Why don't you put it towards something that will have a lasting impact? And like, look, if you invest in something in the beginning, it then pays dividends in the future. Like last year, we agreed to spend more money and we raised more money. This year, we've already exceeded our sponsorship figures from last year. So we know that we see a positive development of that. So we're not going to be cheap on things. And a lot of times, there'll be certain things here and there. And, I'm looking at the budget every day of like, this, and this. Can we do this? And if we can't do it, how can I partner with somebody to offset this? Or, if we do this, can we layer something on? So it's a little bit of like air traffic control slash chess that I'm constantly playing. And that's the part of the job that I really enjoy the most, kind of going from government affairs to, the CEO.
Nice. I'm sorry to go backwards here a little bit, Josh, and I don't want to step on. I don't want to. I want to be respectful here, and I don't want to step on your previous remarks here. This changed since I did my show notes. I was just looking at the PCA website, and it does say the schedule does say a Padron hand rolled. So I know you said you didn't want to necessarily step on
Yep.
Steve and
Yep.
Jesse's announcement or anything like that, but I just want to confirm that I mean I guess they have ownership. They could change that last minute, or you're saying they own that space?
Yeah, yeah, they own that space, however they want to determine to that. But yeah, it is listed on the site, but there hasn't been a lot of the formal marketing about it.
Gotcha. Okay. So my apologies about that. So and like I said, I appreciate you, and I didn't want to be disrespectful of your respectful remarks. So there, but I just wanted to confirm. One of the things I wanted to ask too about this, just kind of going back into like opening day preparations and everything. How do you all balance Um, how do you all balance the commitment to, you know, education, networking, and business, all kind of compacted into that first day. I know you said it sets the tone, like you said, but like how do you balance those three things? Because you've got you as the organization have kind of a limited amount of time trying to jam all that into a very finite, specific, small amount of time relative to the other B2B work that's going on for the remainder of the show.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had to say no to a lot of people wishing to speak. And, we've had to say no to some, people that want to sponsor to speak. And I think it's being, recognizing that importance of day one, that every speaker, every slot should have a meaningful purpose that ties to one of those themes. And, we also have spread it out where there are some activations throughout the trade show, throughout the subsequent 3 days that kind of tie into it. People don't want that first day to be like a classroom setting. It's not going to be people coming up there and lecturing on different things. We did a pilot, conference on a bunch of different topics in Dubai this past year to kind of increase participation and attraction, and that's something that we're looking at for New Orleans, but future trade shows, having some sessions where even if you get 50 or 60 people that are interested in a certain topic, there's that learning element there, and not everything is applicable to everyone in the trade show. I just can't have like a marquee session during the trade show floor hours that will draw, the majority of retailers away from booths, or will draw manufacturers away from their booths. So we've had to really, be very careful of that to make sure that any programming in the other days are going after subsegments of our overall universe of people.
Makes sense. Listen, we already established what a tremendous success last year's trade show was, and I don't want this question to step on that at all. But what was the biggest lesson that you all learned as an organization, or even you learned personally, being the first trade show as the executive director, that you took and specifically carried into the planning for this year's show?
Yeah, so I made a change, and like one of the things that happens behind the scenes with the trade show that not a lot of people probably know this, but we have a full day of board meetings on Thursday. So, that's when registration opens. And I made the change this year that when registration opens, I want to be at the front of registration. So in case there's a technology issue, a glitch, problems, a line forming, any of that stuff, I need to be present so that, and our staff are in a lot of these board meetings. So last year, I remember getting text messages because there was, with registration, it was a little slow for the associate members getting their badges. And so for this year, we will be breaking our board meeting, and when registration opens, our entire staff will be down there. So that was a big, lesson learned for me of like, I cannot run a board meeting setting the tone for the future of the association, constantly looking at my phone if somebody's having a bad experience or not. So juggling the board meeting obligations with the show itself, from my standpoint, is the toughest challenge that I face.
I think that's an example of the personal ownership that you've taken in a lot of things, Josh. And I know you there's a lot of balance that goes on. You can't necessarily be everywhere, every place at the same time. There has to be some delegation from where you sit. But I can tell you firsthand, and I know you've heard this from our team specifically, but you made you made a pledge and a promise to Cigar Media on day one of last year's trade show. You said you would be there to greet us to make sure that we got in at the appropriate time because this has always been it's kind of been a running joke, but a silent frustration for us in media that we don't know if it's gonna, we know what the rule is, but we don't know if it's gonna happen. And you said you would be there to make sure that it happened correctly, and I mean, there was no reason not to believe you. I think but it was a warm welcome by you being there and on day one and everything. And I wanted to extend again my appreciation for that and just say, um, you know, what a boom that was for you as your first trade show last year. So again, thank you very much.
Well, and I love that too because it was funny because one of the contractors that we work with normally lets everybody in at the appropriate time, and I went up to him and said, "Hey, can I do this?" And I think he was a little shocked, like didn't really want to relinquish that responsibility. And I was just so excited. Like, look, I want to be there to welcome people, let them come into the doors of the trade show. We work on this all the time, and like, you know, if Lisa Cox, who runs the trade show, if she wants to do it, then absolutely have her do it, and we might have her do it this year. But like, I think it's important that somebody from staff that really works on this stuff is there to welcome folks. So that was something where like I had to kind of nudge the contractor out of the way to do that. But it was something that, as long as I don't have, a fire or some act of nature to deal with, I will at least be there, on the opening of each time of the show. And subsequent days, I was there too. It wasn't just the first day, for the photo op.
Well, I didn't think so. I didn't think you were doing it for the photo op. I took it as you, standing by your word, and again, just much appreciated there. So one of the cool things that I took from last year's trade show coming into this one, I wanted to see how you guys are navigating it to see if there's. I don't imagine you could add on the same number, but last year it was about seven. If I remember correctly, it was 70 plus new vendors, new exhibitors on the trade show floor of the PCA. That's a huge number. To say nothing of the fact that we had some fantastic returnees that had been long absent, which was a huge credit to you and your team as well. Um, how many new exhibitors can we expect for 2026? I know I'm putting you on the
Yes.
spot.
So the show floor will be sold out again. I think with, we've had good retention though. That was the other thing. I don't want to rinse and repeat and have, everybody
Right.
have
Of
a
course.
bad
Yeah.
experience. So we focused on retention. There's going to be at least 15 to 20 new exhibitors this year, but it will be sold out. We've actually had to cut some of our own space as PCA that we use for the trade show in order to accommodate more spaces for exhibitors. So that's really an exciting, issue to have. I mean,
Hmm.
inevitably a month from now, we're going to have to tell people, no, like we don't have space. And I think it's already getting to that point. Lisa Sigler has done an amazing job. Typically at associations, you have three or four people doing booth sales. She really does that single-handedly. We working with some contractors, but we have seen a couple people from Dubai that had never heard of the PCA that exhibited there, and they decided to come to New Orleans, and that's exciting to have. Where some of this international outreach is proving to be worthwhile and bring some benefits to our North Star, and that really is kind of the guiding principle for me in any of our outreach outside of the United States is how does that lead back into a stronger bond or a stronger association and a stronger trade show for us. So, we're there to build value in the overall show. And, I think our attendance numbers And we already have two of four hotels sold out. Registration just opened last week, and there's been a flurry of hundreds of people already registering. And there's some key points where we're nudging people and saying, hey, like, you better do this, quick. Don't wait till the last minute, because that might not be available at this time. And I think it's kind of socializing attendees to that there's demand now. And there's some conversations where we've had that the tone has changed a lot in the association. Whereas, 5, 6 years ago, it may have been yes to anything just because, it was seen as a show that was on life support. And I think now we're in a very different scenario. And a lot of that comes down to the decisions of the board of directors and our entire staff executing on the direction that they've provided. And that's something I feel really good working with the board and saying, hey, we need to make this tweak, we need to make that tweak, and really push people to get their information to us ahead of time so that they're not waiting to the last minute. And that's, where we see the most issues, and they're always minor issues, but it's when people wait to the last minute, they don't, review what they selected as their booth. There's things that you can plan ahead for. But it's complex. Putting together a large scale event is complex, not only for us, but for exhibitors. And I think it provides them joy. Like I know that it was Chateau Diadem, one of the companies that not only exhibited in New Orleans for the first time, but they exhibited in Dubai for the first time as well. And their first exhibition, building their booth and seeing people come and look at and try their cigars, that to me is very rewarding. Like, I am cognizant of all of the brands that have a 50+ year history, and I respect them, I revere them. When I was a college student reading Cigar Aficionado and smoking my cigars, these were celebrities that I looked towards, and that never goes away. But also now, sitting in the chair that I sit in, it's always great to see new people that want to enter this industry, and they believe that it's a noble profession that can be successful, that can put food on the table of their families, and they can provide joy to people. It's like anything else in hospitality, and that regulators and government can demonize tobacco and demonize premium cigars, but at the end of the day, the proprietors, the retailers, and the manufacturers are providing a semblance of joy in a very chaotic world.
It's awesome. I'm really excited to hear that. I mean, I was not expecting anything where close to 70 new vendors. And I heard, I know it was popular knowledge, and common knowledge that you guys were basically selling off PCA space, as well as new vendors were coming in. So over a dozen new vendors on top of the good retention. What was the retention percent? You said that was a focus of yours. So what was the retention percentage from year over year for you?
I don't have the exact number for you.
No
I don't
problem. I
want
won't hold
to
you to it, Josh.
misquote
Yeah.
that. I can get that from Lisa Sigler tomorrow and follow up, but
Okay.
it's very, very high. It's
Okay.
very high.
Fantastic. Well, I know there were some great new vendors, ones that I particularly enjoyed, ones that I heard great feedback about. I mean, even just the fun one, the local guy who's making soda specifically to pair with
Yeah.
cigars was really
He
cool
had a great
expansion.
show because
Yeah,
you're unique. You have no competitor.
right. Yeah, it's not like two
So
bourbon, two whiskey companies going at each other even or something.
yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, no, it's great. Well, we're gonna come back to a couple more topics, obviously, but want to interrupt this our interview, and we're gonna go with one of our fun segments while I pull up some questions for you on this next segment. I keep getting drawn. I'm sorry, I keep getting drawn to that painting, to my left, your right there. Tell us a little bit about this piece, because this is your apartment. This isn't the PCA World headquarters here. This is your apartment. Tell us a little bit about that piece. My eye keeps getting distracted on this.
So it is George Washington praying at Valley Forge. So
That's
I'm a
awesome.
history nerd. I am a huge history nerd. I'm not going to get your question right on presidential history, but I am still nonetheless a history nerd.
Um, yeah, challenge accepted, right? You because we shared that, right? We you had you didn't get a degree in it, but I think didn't you major in history? Just like
I had a minor in history in
minor.
undergrad.
I had a double major. I didn't get two degrees. I was a foreign language credit shy of getting a degree in history, but it was considered a major considering I took all the coursework for history, other than the foreign language credit, which I'm still shooting my foot in 25 years later. So, but that's awesome. What was one of your favorite classes, your history classes in college? I know I'm making you go back a little bit, not as far
Uh,
back as I would
so
go, but
colonial history
okay.
was definitely, I really like early America, like foundational. I think anyone in political science goes through the task of making the determination of whether they want to go to law school or not. So, like, we had a big prelim in like constitutional law and things like that. But yeah, early America was the courses that I enjoyed the most.
So like pre-revolution colonial America or
Both,
enveloping. Okay.
both, because I was. This is going to really out me as a nerd. Uh, So I was a reenactor, French and Indian War and American Revolution reenactor, just in high school, and I kind of stopped at college. I was like, all right, this isn't work.
This has gotten to a level I just can't. I'm
Yeah,
not cool
yeah,
anymore.
in 40 years I'll return to that because I still love it. But like, I got to get married first. I got to find somebody that's like, all right,
That'll put up with it.
yeah. The
That's
cigar smoking's already, tough to find somebody to put up with that.
that's hilarious. We'll have to chat more about that later because I think that's super cool. So hey, you thought you were nerding out. I would love to hear about that some more. Because you hear about Civil War reenactment, you don't hear about Revolutionary reenactment. So
Yep. We
uh,
used to go to Colonial Williamsburg as a family. My uncle lived there and was actually a Ben Franklin reenactor. That's how I got into it. So he played Ben Franklin at Colonial Williamsburg.
oh, that's awesome. Well, that opens up to our presidential trivia segment brought to you by United Cigars. Are you ready to live the United lifestyle? Launch your palate voyage with United Cigars. You can celebrate over 250 years of excellence with the Red Anchor or experience elegance with La Giana Havana. Rekindle the spirit of 1776 and light up the skies with a firecracker. Then celebrate honor, pride, and accomplishment with this year's number 4 cigar of 2025, a Gold Star. Jet set the globe and capture luxury with Atabey, Byron, Alfonso, Bandolero, or now the Nelson cigar from Selected Tobacco. Don't just smoke, smoke United. United Cigars since 1901. United, we smoke. I'm going to tell my audience about this. Usually I try to curtail it to some kind of connection to my guest with presidential trivia. Absolutely, absolutely none. And I should have probably given you a little bit more heads up, but I did give you a heads up about who it was about this time. I feel like we haven't really talked about James Monroe very much. Fifth president of the United States, and really, really tremendous founding father that doesn't get us enough. Kind of gets overshadowed by the Washingtons, the Adams, the Jeffersons, the Madisons. But he's got a pretty cool story. So we're gonna start with the true or false question. So hey, I'm giving you a 50-50 shot here. Um, True or false? James Monroe, as a teenager, served under General George Washington at the time during the American Revolution and specifically at the Battle of Trenton.
True.
Any context that you know that that's the answer, or are you just guessing?
I, I knew he served in the Continental Army. That's the only thing that I do know of his background in that. So by that logic, I'm saying that everything else, I don't know if it was the Battle of Trenton, but that's the one thing I'm unsure of.
You are absolutely right. It is true. He was 18 years old at the time and a lieutenant, an officer nonetheless. Okay. And he worked as a scout for Washington, believe it or not. And so here's his claim to fame at the Battle of Trenton. Washington sent him ahead to do some scouting along the Delaware River, and much much to his chagrin, I imagine, as an 18-year-old kid, he was shot. So, thankfully, he survived and lived on to history beyond that. So that was a pretty cool little tidbit there. And you would think that his commanding officer sending him to do on a mission that got him shot, you would think that would actually have pissed him off. But no, he ended up serving as an ambassador under Washington to the country of France during Washington's presidency. Um, and actually, it was there that's when they started to become rivals. Monroe was not the biggest fan of Washington specifically. They ended up kind of having a parting of the ways a little bit as he served as ambassador to France. When Washington eventually fired Monroe after he criticized which treaty?
Could you repeat that?
So Monroe was fired as the ambassador to France during Washington's presidency after he criticized publicly this treaty.
The Treaty of Versailles?
It would be a good guess, but it's actually the Jay Treaty.
Jake?
Yeah, the Jay Treaty. It was
Not have gotten that.
Yeah, and that was really pushed for. The Jay Treaty wasn't necessarily I mean, it was under Washington's presidency, but it was really pushed forward by a close ally of Washington, Alexander Hamilton, who Monroe and Hamilton did not get along at all. So he ended up being getting on the blacklist, so to speak, and he ended up getting fired, which was fortunate. But um, I'm sure you knew this. James Monroe basically held almost every political office that you could, at least in early America, before he was named before he was elected to president of the United States. But he was not afraid of making rivals and making enemies. I mean, we had just listed two, Washington and Hamilton. I mean, those are two prominent early Americans, the father of our country, uh, and Alexander Hamilton, that were, you know, they were at political odds. But he was actually at odds with another um, famed founding father. So I wanted to give you this one. This is multiple choice. Was it A, James Madison, B, John Adams, C, Thomas Jefferson, or D, Patrick Henry?
I'm going to say Patrick Henry.
That is correct. Do you know the context around that?
I don't.
So you would think that that Madison and Monroe, who were backs, they were actually they were in opposite parties. You would think, and both coming from Virginia, you'd think that they were rivals, and they kind of were. Um, it was James Madison who actually won the fight in Virginia over ratifying the Constitution in 1789. So Monroe was not against it, but had his issues with it. He was more of a states' rights kind of guy, and liked the Articles of Confederation just a little bit more. Just to sum up history a little bit, and then they ran against each other for a seat in the House of Representatives, and they took part in a lot of public debates. But the two actually became very good friends, and this really, really angered Patrick Henry because Madison was a Patrick Henry guy, and the fact that his guy was friends now with James Monroe, who he hated, uh, was a big, big problem. So, just some fun little tidbits of history. But James Monroe was not afraid to roll up his sleeves and go to fisticuffs with some of our nation's founding fathers, including the father of our country, Patrick Henry, and Alexander Hamilton, to just name a few. So, that's a little bit about our fifth president of the United States. So, who also died on July 4th. He was one of the presidents that died on July 4th. So.
I did know that.
So that one was too easy. I couldn't give you that one because I figured you knew that one. So, but um, what did you in your? I got to go back to this for a second, just 2 seconds. Your Revolutionary reenactment. Did you play any prominent Americans? You said your uncle was Benjamin Franklin.
No, I was just a regular like frontier militia soldier. And then I the with the French and Indian, it was like you had the frock coat and
Hmm.
I wanted to get like the canoe and the kayak and all of that stuff, but I didn't have enough money. So that will come when I'm 60 years old and I get back into reenacting. I'm gonna have every bell and whistle and I always said like if I ever win the lottery, I'm buying a cannon to put in front of my house. Like that's how I have one of those like swivel cannon that is in my basement in Erie, Pennsylvania.
That's awesome. Well, with all those patents that your uncle playing Benjamin Franklin, surely he would have gotten you a better role than a militiaman. But
Yeah,
I guess in every place, and even in American history, even in colonial America, you had to work your way up, right?
I
So
think, if I keep the mustache, I could play Joshua Chamberlain in Civil War reenacting.
there you
And
go. That's a great poll. He's one of my favorite people in history. So my father's side of the family is actually from Maine, believe it or not. Now we're not related, at least nothing that I could ever find. He was he was actually very close friends with a distant relative of mine who served under him during the Civil War, and they went to college together, boating college. Um, so fun fact there. That's funny. That's a cool pool that you just pulled out of thin air there. Nice. So, that was our presidential trivia segment, which is always brought to you by United Cigar. Don't you smoke? Smoke United. United Cigar since 1901. United we smoke. Thanks for being a good sport on James Monroe there, Josh. But you got a couple of them right. So,
yeah, two or
not
three, right?
not bad for getting thrown at you. But but wait till you get that PhD, then you'll just know everything.
I hope so.
So, well, let's go back to some of the items we've talked about the trade show, but I wanted to go into what else the PCA has been up to this year. Now, there's a huge war being waged right now. A lawsuit's been filed in the state of California. Um, without me rehashing the details myself, obviously you could probably do this better and summarize it. What is the state of this lawsuit, and why is this so crucial for premium cigar advocacy?
Yeah, so right now, both the state and federal case, so there's two lawsuits. There's a federal and there's a state challenge to it. They were filed. This was something that was led by several Cigar Rights of America companies as well as Cigar Rights of America. We joined in the lawsuit on behalf of the retailers in California. The UTL is a mess. It's a cluster. There's issues galore, but it involves the registration of all non-flavored cigars and significant application fees to do so, a cumbersome system. That is kind of directly referencing the public comments that we've submitted throughout the process. We've asked for concessions. The state of play is that the judges will be hearing the arguments. A lot of the procedural injunctions have not gone the way of the industry on that. But we continue to challenge that at every step of the way that we can. Additionally, concurrent with the litigation on the advocacy side, which I'm more involved in than the litigation, is filing those public comments, asking for concessions, bringing to the attention gaps in the actual regulation itself, because it was done in a very shoddy manner. And I think that if you look at the sequence of events of where the Attorney General's Office of California has had to ask, as recently it was December 23rd, where they had a oral public comment session. We submitted written public comments. that they're asking for more information, and yet they're administering this regulation in a haphazard way. I can't talk too much about where things stand on the legal sense because it is active litigation and
Sure,
we
of
are a
course.
party to that. But I can say that every step of the way, whether it's the courts or an advocacy, will be involved. We also provided seed money last year to set up a new California State Association of Retailers. It's a very, very challenging political environment. They don't really think of the economic impacts of anything. Their economic analysis that was in the regulation itself, that's something I feel very comfortable in saying was completely out of whack. That the fees related to this and even the logistics that, there were companies that had to send pallets of product to California, and all these cigars are going to be destroyed. Why can't you do a picture submission of the products themselves and send it over so that they don't have to lose that product, pay for shipping? I mean, there are so many little things that could have been done better in the administration of any type of regulation of this nature, but they simply don't care.
So, I mean, I think some companies have probably made the quiet decision. I think the most public company was Steve Sock with Dunbar and Tobacco and Trust, where he said that he's not going to do this. He's not going to sell products to California retailers as long as this is something that is going to be present. You mentioned Josh, and again, if I run into any area that you can't talk about, I know you'll let me know here, but it does seem a little bit. You mentioned that it was kind of an ambush. It came out of nowhere a little bit. Is that why it kind of feels like it was kind of an I'll use that word again. It does feel like it was kind of an ambush, or it was something that was the and forgive me here, was the industry too focused on the federal that this kind of really came out of nowhere and we were kind of all ambushed by it, or was there just not enough tension on the state level that could have seen this coming?
So I think it happened so long ago. This is nothing new. They rushed the regulation itself, which ties to a piece of legislation. Now, we fought this legislation. That's where you see the exemption. Now, the exemption with $12 wholesale, we didn't agree with that. We were pushing against that threshold. So, we were active against this bill, but that was 3 years ago. So, people kind of forgot about that, we were against that along with a lot of the other industry groups. And then California rushed the regulation along in a very haphazard way. So I think the sequence of events I would tell you if like we messed up or we were asleep at the wheel, it wasn't the case in this instance. There are things that can fall through the cracks when you're dealing with a lot of stuff. And,
50 states and the federal level, it's a lot.
absolutely. I reviewed all of the submissions, all of the opportunities of where, and look, I know some people were, saying, why wasn't there more information for retailers to get involved and stuff like that? But there's part of the process where, there were, and I think it was referenced in one of the media that PCA did not provide public comments or push back in two instances. And in those two instances, no public comments were accepted at the time. So I want to, cite that fact. I can say within confidence that we were engaged every step of the way in the process, along with our, partners, especially Cigar Rights of America, and even the CAA in pushing back against this. It is, I think it speaks volumes to the political climate in the state of California. And I mentioned in the green room before the show, like they have these disclosures now on third-hand smoke requirements
Hmm.
for private property or and even apartment complexes. things like that. They just have gotten so granular, and unfortunately, it's California is a state where I would love to see more membership, and whether they're donating to Cigar Rights of America or joining the PCA, or involved in any of the associations, it's good. But like there is a sense of accountability, in the move from Vegas to New Orleans. Our biggest drop in membership was from California, and you talk, proximity. They viewed the some of the retailers in California viewed it as a ticket to the trade show rather than the advocacy prowess. So, if I look at, the pure economics of last year, we spent more money in California than we generated by a long shot. And even if you factor in this year in the dues renewal, and I don't want to disparage, there are some great retailers that have been members of the association for 30 years, but there's some sense of it is like if you have a flood, you don't sign up for insurance or home insurance when there's water in your home. Like that there has to be a little bit of advanced planning and saying, all right, I'm a steward of the industry, I need to do the responsible thing, and even if I'm not going to New Orleans, I'm going to pay my $600 to support, so in case something comes up. And like, if that's a frustration for me in California, and I would even throw Massachusetts in there as well, like where we see a significant gap. And look, I know it's tough to run a business in those states. It's not a
Yeah, I was just
favorable
about to say.
environment. And $600 is a lot when you're looking at all those margins and all those things that you have to deal with. But I would say to the retailers that are in California and Massachusetts in particular, we want to be helpful and we want to put all the resources that we can. But like, I also have to juggle that with states like, Pennsylvania and Florida, where, every retailer is joining and we're getting a lot of resources there, or even states like Alabama that we don't have to spend a whole lot of money on every year, but they're paying their dues and they have a strong state association. So I think that, looking in the future, hopefully more people will join the California Association and join the PCA or contribute to CRA.
How do you balance the diplomacy there when you're talking? You mentioned, I'm just going to take a couple of states that you mentioned. When you have representatives or retailers in Alabama and Pennsylvania saying, "Hey, I'm paying good money into this, and all this money's going to California, all this money's going to Massachusetts, and a fraction of those retailers are involved." Like, what do you say? Like, what can you
Yeah.
say?
So, I mean, we kind of guarded against this with our grant program. So, any state can apply for that grant program. So, last year we financed the creation of a new state association, and the lawsuit was a special expense. We feel as though California and some of what's going on there could have a national impact. So, we're
Sure.
looking at it as you don't want something like this to spread like wildfire. But the grants themselves, a lot of the states are ones that might have a challenge that might, like, we funded New York, Virginia, Illinois, a variety of states, but Alabama could go and they can apply for this money, $5,000, $10,000. It's very limited for the state association. And then if something reaches the national conversation where we think 5 or 6 states might take a look at this, then it becomes for a larger conversation where I'll go to the board of directors and say, hey, we've identified this as a problem. Can we appropriate some more money there for it? So we're trying to provide services for members personally to areas and parts of the country that may never have met somebody from the PCA outside of the trade show. I'm doing events, I'm doing meet and greets, I'm doing just random visits to members and some non-members for recruitment. We're going to Mississippi in late Jan or February. I may be adding New Mexico in February as well, but those are two states in particular where, at least in the history that I've been with the association, which has been 6 years, no one has gone to those states to really drive membership, recruitment, education, advocacy. And a lot of those times I'm having conversations with a couple owners and they'll say, hey, this is on our radar. This is a concern. And that kind of informs some of our advocacy strategy or our overall planning for association activities.
Just to kind of again put a microscope on California, it was 1986 when San Luis Obispo became the first municipality in the world to be a not to turn a city, town, hamlet, whatever you want to call it, into a non-smoking uh, destination or a non-smoking city specifically. So the history against this industry is marrow deep in California. How I know that's got to be frustrating for the organization, and I know that's got to be frustrating for you, but how does it not seem like fighting a losing battle? Like you said, I heard you before, Josh. I don't want you to repeat yourself or feel like you have to about this could act as a brush fire or a catalyst across the country. But is there an avenue for a win in a state like California when historically this is something they do not want?
Yeah, I think really in some of the states where we've seen the most success at the state level and advancing positive legislation rather than being defensive, it's really getting one or two champions. And I say that dually, one or two state retailers taking the lead in the association, looking at, advocacy stuff with Glenn almost on a daily, if not weekly basis, and, coming up with ideas. In Idaho, perfect example, two or three retailers were able to get that tax cap passed. So, it takes leadership among retailers to advance positive legislation. And then we're seeing in a couple states where retailers have actually gone and run for public office. Now, if you have somebody at the state level in California that's a state senator or a state representative, they can work within their colleagues to kind of say, hey, this idea is crazy. I understand what you want to do from a public policy perspective, and you don't like cigarettes, you don't like vape, you don't want kids smoking, but this is what we could do that's better. So, I think my hope is that, and it's tough. Who wants to get involved in politics as a candidate right now in a very polarized, difficult time? But like, I'm hoping some of the retailers, will answer the call, or, even manufacturers. I know that we had one of our members in Iowa that became a state senator, Mike Pike. He designed, home cigar lounges and ventilation. And I think he opened a cigar lounge as well. So, I think right now we have 7 or 8 state elected officials that are tied to the premium cigar industry directly.
Hmm.
That number should double. And like, especially in states like California, because you can be that one agent of change,
Sure.
that really guards against things. So if we're looking at California to really improve, that would be my suggestion. And we're seeing the underpinnings of that. I know Eric Smaldino and Kim Squires are taking a lot of leadership there in the state association.
Kim's
Hopefully,
fantastic. Kim is fantastic.
so,
Yeah.
hopefully some others join and support them because, they're running their businesses and they've had local issues to have to deal with as well.
Hmm.
So, in California's, the magnitude of that state and the diversity of that state, I think having 6 or 8 retailers with skin in the game, realizing that they might have to pony up. It's more time than financial. Time and effort into it will be an important thing. And like, some of the retailers that were on the fence about, renewing and joining, that's the other piece of it. Like, we really need that support because when I'm going to kind of sell support of a state in the terms of funding, I have to internally lobby to an extent and say, hey, this is worth our while. It makes it easier if I can say, look, there's 350 retailers in California instead of 200.
Sure.
That's more compelling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Josh, but I mean, something kind of what you said kind of excited me. Is it PCA's position that you guys are taking an active role in recruiting potential candidates to run for political office in some of these states to become champions for the industry?
Yeah, Glenn and I have worked on that, haphazard here. It's somebody who has a call to service, they're interested, and then we kind of advise them a little bit, some best practices. I mean, we have a political action committee, and we actually changed our political action committee last year where we can donate to state level candidates. Previously, it was only federal. So that's yes, the answer is we want to support and facilitate some of that. And like, fortunately, we can do in-kind contributions as well as regular contributions to kind of get people going. So, if there's a retailer or manufacturer or even cigar consumer watching the show and they're interested in, running for state house or state senate, please reach out to Glenn or I, and we can point you in the right direction. And if not, help kind of build that foundation.
So just to put a bow on this on the piece of California here, and I want to go back not too far, but I want to just kind of unpack it a little bit in layman's terms. If I'm someone from California and I'm listening to this podcast or I'm interested in this lawsuit, what is the state of California what are lawmakers proposing specifically about some of the restrictions you mentioned kind of sort of in passing a little high level. Can we get a little more specific? If I run a cigar company, what do I have to do now as part of this proposed legislation that we're fighting against?
So it's enacted legislation that has
Enacted
come
legislation. My
to the
apologies.
regulation, and basically, if your product is not flavored, you have to submit it for review to be listed under the unflavored tobacco listing. It's a web portal, and you have to pay a $300 application fee per SKU. And the ones that are not on that listing are not being able to be sold in the state of California. So, like, if the manufacturer doesn't go through that process, retailers cannot, provide that.
So for larger companies, and look, it's a big ticket item, especially for bit larger companies. I mean, they've got numerous SKUs, a huge portfolios. But I mean, and I mean that's a big check no matter no matter where you're sitting. But from a smaller company perspective, um, it's probably even more damning because it becomes a bigger piece of the small pie that they're already a part of. Have you um have you seen? I mean, like I said, Steve with Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust is probably the most public, but have you seen a large I don't know what man, I'm losing my words here, but a large large running away from the state of California from manufacturers at this point?
There's certainly has been a haircut, of SKUs offered. Most manufacturers look at what they're selling into California, and like, some of it is not financially viable. I can tell you, like, it's tough to do a shop exclusive. It's tough to do limited editions. Like, you're going to have to now, like, the fee is definitely intimidating for manufacturers to do. So, a lot of the smaller companies, let's say they have 150 SKUs, they might only submit, 100. So that means 50 SKUs are exiting the market. So, our viewpoint is that that is not serving a public health principle. It's very arbitrary and capricious. The beneficiaries of this regulation, and I don't think it's really large companies or small companies in the cigar sector, California is going to be shifting buying patterns to Nevada. Nevada has a very favorable state OTP tax. You have some great shops there, and people are going to be buying it outside of the state rather than in California or even shipping into California online. It's an unfortunate occurrence for those folks because you get it. If it's flavored and not flavored, California banned flavored cigars. And that's something that we don't support either. That we fought against this flavor ban. So it really is kind of the perfect storm. I've seen manufacturers of the small to medium size have to pay $40,000 in application fees. So that is insane to me.
Yeah, I mean that's a large amount of money before you can even recoup some of that cost, not to mention the cost of doing business already on top of that. I think and you mentioned this a little bit in the green room, Josh, so I want to bring it forward, the economic impact. Um, and you kind of outlined it there a little bit, but um this isn't going to stop premium cigar uh sales in the state of California. But it does take money out of California.
Yeah.
Um, what has been the argument against that you've heard, or like are they hoping that the money will somehow appear somewhere else, like in terms of being in California, or they're just like we're willing to cut this revenue stream for our economy by an X amount of percentage and be okay with it? Like what are they telling their constituents?
That it's a public health measure, that the application fees are going to pay for new programs in the Attorney General's office. But really, the way we look at it is essentially the non unflavored cigars are paying for the regulation of the ban on flavored cigars. So it really is just a mess. Like the what they're telling their constituents, it's not a red, it means the most to if you're a cigar consumer or a cigar retailer in the state of California, but that might not be something that you're willing to vote out your local representative or your local state senator. Like this
Right.
isn't one of those like wedge issues that's going to make or break a political candidate so they
Sure.
feel, comfortable enough to voting yes, even if they, and like there's a proliferation of laws in California that just make no sense. And like you see this across the board. And I'm not being, you know, overly political in this. Like I've seen a lot of very draconian rules. There was a bill that came through our system last week in Indiana from a Republican. So like it's bipartisan lunacy of not giving people adults personal choice and personal responsibility. And fundamentally, that's something that the association wants to assert. And we believe that whether you're an adult, you should be able to make an informed decision whether or not to enjoy a premium cigar or not. Full stop. And you should have ample opportunities to buy those cigars in established age gated venues. Like we get it. Youth access, not an issue for us. You want to have the people 100% identification checks, things like that. You're not going to find any resistance from the PCA on a measure like that. If you're guarding against youth access, fine. But some of these other things that have secondary, tertiary effects that ruin the marketplace or recalibrate the marketplace, all you're going to do is influence buying patterns outside of brick and mortar in California.
Yeah, I'm really trying to look at this from a subjective perspective. And if you're if I'm if I'm an anti-tobacco citizen and I'm being sold this bag of, public health with this and that I support and I say, okay, this sounds great. But wait, you're telling me premium cigars aren't going anywhere, which is ultimately my goal, right? If I'm an anti-tobacco citizen, cigars are still here. But wait, now less money is coming to my state. Like gosh, I don't get how
Yeah,
they could sit there and sit there and support that, you know?
I think that public health folks think that there's going to be a significant constriction in the market, which I think is valid. I mean, I think that they're not only in the availability of products, but I think they will view it as, well, stores are going to have to shutter. Not everyone's going to be able to sell these products. So, part of it has to do with, hitting the businesses and negatively impacting them where they will have to shutter their doors, or new businesses will think twice about creating a new business in this category.
Well, turning our attention to a couple of new additions to PCA, I thought this would be interesting to talk about. I don't know if you've really talked too much about it publicly, but this was back in August, the recent hiring of Ricardo Carioni as the Director of International Affairs and Education. So what precisely does the gap does he fill?
So a lot of what Ricardo has been focused on has been education, in the sense of other conferences, speaking opportunities. He was the co-founder of the Cigar Academy. We've used some of their modules with different training programs. He, along with myself and Maria, led the pilot course at FIU on luxury cigar marketing. He did a conference at Intertabac as well as the World Cigar Show in Dubai. So his role is really focused on how do we professionalize the industry? How do we provide training resources to manufacturers and retailers? So there's going to be a couple new webinars launching that are dedicated to retailers, as well as some fundamental, agricultural business practices. We're creating kind of a repository for that. And then, his other function is on the membership side, which is international. So he's there to support Maria and Lisa, who run our membership. Lisa Sigler runs our membership with Maria. They are to handle the U.S. They divide associates and retail. Ricardo is to help create programs and provide opportunities for any retailer and manufacturer outside of the United States to join the association. So Ricardo will be at Pro Sabor as well as Pro Cigar coming up. And he's worked, we've seen, 20 or so retail members outside of the United States join the association since he's come on board.
The We had Todd Nafee on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked a little bit about his experience going to the World Cigar Show. Um, from where you sat as the executive director and CEO of PCA, what were your goals going into the World Cigar Show, and did you view it as a success? Wanted to get your perspective.
Yeah, I honestly did not know what to expect. My goals for it, were to go into an emerging market, to build a conversation space and connection in that area. We work with Raid from the Leaf Master, and he's been a phenomenal member of ours, kind of advising us. I had never been to Dubai before I went the day before the show. We worked on a partnership with Quartz, which they've been great. They do, I think, 18 or 20 different trade shows on different areas around the world, and they have done some stuff in this space before, and they wanted a partner that was focused on cigars, and the stars kind of aligned there. So we wanted to provide, a distinctive forum for the Middle East and Asia, and Africa. Those were our three segments. And, we had 1,700 dedicated attendees for the first iteration, 60 exhibitors. And a lot of the companies were not exhibitors that we had encountered in the U.S. trade shows. So it was kind of building the capacity. I mentioned one of the phrases that I frequently talk about is how the U.S. is the largest premium cigar market. We feel as though that whether it's exporting ideas, and best practices, and some of the research that we've been doing a lot more research too, and sharing that with our counterparts throughout the world. So, whether it's me presenting the tax cap study that we just commissioned, the results of that to folks in Europe, which I did in November, or setting up a forum for the World Cigar Show. The interconnectedness of the industry is very important for long-term longevity. Crazy ideas in the EU or Australia or something that quickly folks in California start to look at. So I think it's important for us to have conversations with our peers. So we set up a conference there. We set up the trade show. To me, it was very successful. I also was shocked at the willingness of restaurants and hotels to allow cigar smoking pretty much anywhere. And that was something that amazed me. And, when I came back to the States, I'm like, man, I thought we were good in terms of the ability to smoke cigars in a lot of places. And it's going to grow. We renewed for next year, and this is a long-term commitment. I hope we cross 2,000 attendees next year, and we're looking at a variety of different things and other partnerships throughout the world. If it makes financial sense, it was profitable year one for us. And all the resources that we profited from that, I can put towards programming for retailers. And that's where, the whole association comes together. Let's say, for instance, $50,000 profit from the World Cigar Show. I can then dedicate $50,000 to a lawsuit in California. So I am very open to new programs and kind of testing the waters for that. And it was great. Our team really came together because you had back to back. You had World Cigar Show, and then you had the FIU course. And those were two brand new ideas, kind of uncharted for the our trade associate. A lot of other associations do more of that. And look, there were some people that were hesitant, and then they saw a lot of the photos of the after hours receptions and even the show floor, and they're like, "Wow, this actually happened." And I think we're going to have more for next year because there were a lot of people that were doubting. They were like, "They're going to cancel this. This isn't going to happen." You have your naysayers, and like that kind of comes into one of our things of trying to change the mentality of the association or the industry a little bit of like, hey, even if I don't go and exhibit in Dubai, I don't need to sit online and complain about this idea. It doesn't have any effect on me. We did not spend any resources from the association. It was on Dubai. It was a net positive for the association. So I feel very comfortable in doing programs like that.
You- So you mentioned policies, anti-tobacco policies that are going in place in other parts of the world that are pretty damning to the industry. And you mentioned Australia specifically, and I know that in that part of the world, generational bans are something that are a bit of a hot topic, and not just a hot topic, but also becoming a reality in some countries. It's something that's also been flirted with in the state of Hawaii and other places in this country. So it's kind of creeping in. and I hate beating this dead horse, Josh. I haven't really beat it with you, but I beat it with other leaders in the organization enough. Was there not enough of a fight put up against T21 that now we have to kind of fight this invisible thing? And it's not quite invisible because, like I said, it's creeping up of generational bans that could sneak up on us in the way that this legislation in California did. I want to emphasize. I know you said you weren't asleep at the wheel. I'm giving you credit to say that there was an ambush in California with these these outlandish this outlandish legislation that we talked about for a while. But generational bans could be the single largest enemy that we face as an industry. What 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 do we have in place as an organization that's looking into this and battling it abroad and also here at home?
Yeah, so I mentioned a lot of the research. That's one component to it. We're also part of a coalition in Massachusetts where that's been the area where we've seen the most traction with localities, banning the sale for folks that are born after a certain date. And the localities that have passed this, we've had no PCA members that have been, located in those areas so far. Also, there's been a few of them where it passed where they don't even have a tobacco shop in the locality. I think it's most concerning at the state level. I think that there is the ability, because it involves age, there could be a successful legal challenge in certain areas if they were to enact it. I know Tennessee has flirted with the idea, Hawaii, as you mentioned, California. So there's a lot of states that have seen that. We actually testified virtually against the generational smoking ban in New Zealand, which was actually they enacted it, the government changed, and then they reversed course on it. So it's an
Big
ebb
win.
and flow. I think it's something that's very concerning, as you mentioned. At the state, because we have 50 states, you're just moving buying patterns for the most part. Like these localities, it's not good sound public policy because you have people that go to the next county or the next state and they're buying their products. You're not really, unless you had nationally, which will never happen because that would be a fundamental constitutional issue that we would challenge every step of the way. It's very hard to, they're trying to parade this public policy when it's really a prohibition. That's really fundamentally what it is.
Let me interrupt you for a second, Josh, and I apologize. I don't mean to be rude here, but you used a word that my father always said to never use, and it was kind of always a joke. He would always say, "Never say never." You said it would never happen. That's a bold statement from where
Yeah.
you sit. How how
Net, net,
I have all
net,
the confidence in the world in you, Josh. That's a bold statement, though.
I feel very confident that never in my lifetime will it be enacted. A complete generational smoking ban in the entire U.S. federally. Federally, I feel very confident.
I'm sorry. That was really bold. I had to point it out. And I'm older than you, Josh, so I feel good about the
Now,
whole not in your
now,
lifetime thing. So,
yeah. Well, and
but
I also will say
but I worry
that
about my kids.
introduced is another story. Now, could we see something introduced? Yes, but like I think there are enough levers in our system of government to pull something from the national level. And like, look, they federally they have not gotten a lot of wins, the anti-tobacco groups, and that's why they're trying and seeing some success in random localities or states of favorable makeup, like a California.
This is my last question of the formal interview, and then we'll finish up the show with some fun segments here, Josh. I'm going to step off screen for just a second, but I wanted you to answer this question. George Rico was joined the PCA board recently, and I thought this was a really cool. I'm a big fan of George, as everybody knows, but I think he's an exceptional leader and has a great perspective that he can share with the PCA board. I'm sure you agree. But what I thought
Absolutely.
was really unique about it was, with the exception of, and please correct me here, with the exception of Christian Iroa, who's been a prominent member of the industry and really gone to bat for our rights and served on number of boards and organizations, including the PCA. George represents Honduras as a manufacturer. There's a lot of focus on Nicaragua. It's and rightfully so. There's a ton of manufacturers there. Dominican Republic is very prominent. I feel like Honduras kind of gets left kind of left to the side when it comes to those the three major premium cigar producing countries. Um, Talk, if you can, to the importance of George joining the board from that perspective and just his addition to the board overall.
Yeah, George is very engaged. He's not afraid to give his opinion and feedback and has come up with a lot of ideas. We're actually getting ready to do a special cigar with George for the South Beach Food and Wine Festival. So he's somebody that we've partnered with for that. But certainly he and Christian are the 1-2 combo when it comes to Honduras. We have diverse board representation. 19 board members. 14 retailers and 5 manufacturers and distributors. And we actually have the board election process begins this week. So there will be 4 retail slots up for election and 1 manufacturer. It's good to get new life, new blood. I know that there's a couple folks that are not running for reelection. So regardless of who wins, we will have some new people coming on the board, and it's a good opportunity for us to engage with some folks. And we had good participation. I think there were 26 applicants for the board. So there are going to be 4 candidates for the associate slot and 8 candidates for the retail slot, of which 4 will be selected, and 1 will be selected on the associate side.
Just between you and I, and obviously the public, because this is a public question. I mean, how hard did you guys push for Kim to run for the board, considering everything that's going on in California?
So we don't have anybody from California that ran for the board. Surprisingly, I think honestly, it's one of those things with the time commitment at the state. They're focused on a lot of those things, but getting California representation in the future would be great. I mean, we have several, upcoming people roll in and out every year. So, this time we try and keep a regional balance, and ultimately the nominating committee and the executive committee, they determine of the candidates who, gets to go to the ballot. I look forward to it as an opportunity to really work with somebody in a different light and get to, share their feedback. I try, and one of the reasons why I'm going to Mississippi is to go to John, his shop, Spring Street Cigars. He's one of my board members. I try to go to the home base of all of our board members and sit and have a 3-4 hour. Sometimes it turns into a philosophical conversation about the future of the premium cigar industry. But for me, it's very rewarding getting to work with new people. And I can say, honestly, everyone on the board has provided feedback that has influenced the ultimate direction of the association, which I think, most people would look at and say, the association is heading in the right direction.
It's awesome. Well, really excited to, see what George and will do in his time on the board, and then obviously with the upcoming election, and then obviously a new manufacturer will also be joining in addition to those 4 open seats as well too. So um, that'll continue to be public as it's been recently, correct, Josh?
That's correct. Yep. There'll be an announcement, most likely at the trade show. That's when they're formally seated, but we may make the announcement once the results of the election are over, which it will be in about 2 weeks.
Will the ballot be public?
I don't know if the ballot is going to be public or not. I believe so. I believe that will be public. It's one of those areas like I administer the bylaws, but a lot of the term, like the elections, because the board actually votes whether to retain me, a lot of the elections of the board of directors are done within the board of directors and those decisions. So like a lot of times provided advice, but it's not my decision to make.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. Really excited to see you here in a couple months at the upcoming premium cigar trade show in New Orleans, and it'll be a lot of fun. But before we let you go, we've got some fun segments lined up for you. And this next segment is brought to you by Pastani Cigars. Everybody eats. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Pastani Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Pastania, everybody eats. Now, Josh, this question, there's normally a set of questions that I ask in this segment to my guest, but something that came to my attention as I was preparing for the show that I didn't know until before, I wanted to ask you about this. In addition to your impeccable academic resume, as we highlighted at the top of the show, you're also a partner in three restaurants. Um, and so if it, Taco Rock, Hyde Social, and Carbonara. Um, and I believe they're all in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's
Um,
correct.
so h- how did this come about? How did you get into this? And I mean, I'm a foodie, so I'm all excited about this. And these all, I looked at the pages, looked at everything about it. I mean, these all sound like some phenomenal concepts, restaurants, and everything like this. How did you get into this?
Yeah, so, just through a lot of friends, 5 years ago, during the pandemic, we opened our first Taco Rock, and, I'm a minority investor in two different groups. And, the taco and tequila concept has been good. We have 5 locations of that. Hyde Social, that's more of a sports bar, good atmosphere. I go there a lot and have a cigar out on the patio. Same thing with Carbonara. We have a cigar patio. Carbonara, I think, is the one that I'm most proud of. We're actually getting ready to open our second location, which is 3 times the size of that one,
Oh,
the
wow.
current one. And it is like you think Godfather, old Italian, great food. Portions are huge. Friday, Saturday, we have a Sinatra impersonator come. The cocktails are meant for Instagram. A lot of our dishes have gone viral. And so I think by the end of this year, I will be a partner in 10 restaurants. Kind of by accident, they've been successful. We work with a great chef, Mike Cordero, who's done very well and has got a lot of accolades and acclaim. But for me, they're just, spots that I got lucky. I put up a little bit of money like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, and kind of just kept rolling the dice, and hopefully none of them fail. Like you always hear horror stories about the restaurant industry and how it's tough, and like that hasn't been my experience because I've fortunately worked with really good people and they've had some really fun concepts, and it's a place where I, normally hang out. There a lot, three of them are actually located within walking distance of one another. So I kind of like will go one day and just make my rounds.
I mean, you said that this kind of just, during the pandemic, this was 5 or 6 years ago, you just happened upon this opportunity. I mean, but was this something that you like have always wanted to do, or was it really just like an organic on the, off the cuff, on a whim kind of opportunity that just presented itself?
So with Taco Rock, I was running a nonprofit that I started, which is now the Advocacy Association. It's essentially an association for lobbyists, public affairs folks. I started that, and we were doing a ton of events, and we had, I forget if it was a location cancel or a catering order didn't show up. And I was frustrated with that. And I'm like, I need my own place. Like, I have enough friends in this, but like, if I own a piece of it, I can ensure that for any event, we will always have food or a location. Go. So I went to one of my friends and said, he had like 22 restaurants. And I said, when the next thing comes up, please reach out to me. I want to get involved somehow. And, 5% owner, in that. And, we kept kind of building those, and, it's been kind of fun to see, but, yeah, it's really just been friends coming up with ideas. I love hospitality in general. That's what my concentration will be in my doctorate. But seeing some concepts and food spaces and all of that come together where patrons are enjoying the experience, um, that's something that really excites me. So like I'm gonna keep doing it as long as an investor, not, I don't do any of the day to day. I'm not looking at schedules or preparing menus and things like that. I get to have a little bit of an imprint here and there. So like carbonara, which I mentioned is my favorite of the concepts. Um, every check is presented in a cigar box. And that's something that I had influence on.
That's that's awesome. Um, well, I'm there. I have some planned travel this year going to into Virginia, so I'll definitely have to. Hopefully, our schedules will align, and I'd love to visit one of your establishments. That'd be so cool. Um,
Absolutely.
fantastic. I thought that was so neat. I thought I was like, how am I just hearing about this? I mean, I know we don't talk that often, but I was really excited to talk to you about this because that's super cool. Um,
Yeah. I love a lot of the industry folks that come to DC. I'll take them to Carbonara. Like I'm proud of it. So like I've had some of my board members, and it really is a cool experience, and everybody has enjoyed it. Christian Roy, we were talking about it. He still raves about it, and he's kind of a tough critic on stuff. So like when he was pleased with it, I was like, all right,
there you go.
it really is what I think it is. I'm not biased.
So where's the first location of Carbonara?
Ballston, Virginia.
Okay, and then where's the second location going to be opening up?
Gainesville, Virginia.
Okay. Help me out with some geography. Like, where is that in akin to other parts of the state?
Ballston,
No,
Ballston's
Gainesville. I'm familiar with Boston for some
uh,
miraculous reason.
Gainesville's about 30 minutes outside of the city.
Okay. All right. Falls Church
All
area or
little further than Falls
okay.
Church.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome, Josh. Fantastic. Well, good. Best of luck as that continues to grow for you, and excited to hopefully uh join you at one of these restaurants. Hopefully, one of these days will be great. So. Awesome. That was our Everybody Eats segment brought to you by our friends at Pastani Cigars. So the next segment is our this or that segment brought to you by Artista Cigars, which is truly the last hidden gem of the Dominican Republic with nearly 70 years of rolling cigar experience. The family behind Artista believes in honoring their long-held traditions of handmade artistry. Artista's blends include factory exclusive tobaccos and front marks for every budget. In fact, Artista Cigars has been one of the most varied portfolios on the market today. There's something for everyone at Artista. Now, if you're like me and never can decide, Artista Cigars is truly a breath of fresh air because I could take something from any box Artista has to offer, and I know I'm getting something truly special. So as I was putting this together, I got to confess, Josh, I think I might be asking you some tougher questions than I thought. But this was supposed to be fun. The concept is I give you a choice between two things, and you just pick one.
Sure.
Um, so let's talk about the trade show. In your experience at PCA, New Orleans or Las Vegas?
Las Vegas.
Oh, okay. Snap. Okay. All right. Cool.
I
What?
love Vegas. I,
You,
I I'm a Vegas fan. I'm one of those people that, I've gone for other conventions and conferences and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to diminish New Orleans at all. Like, I think the food in the city is great, but like as a hospitality, somebody who's interested in that, you know, Vegas attracts the best restaurants and the best hotels, the best of everything to its city. And like I like the old Vegas, new Vegas. So like I'm looking forward to my first show in 2027 in Vegas doing that. So like I feel very confident in New Orleans and I know that it will deliver for sure. But like people don't like change and the variability of things. So like there's going to be after we hopefully execute a good 2026 show, people are going to be, apprehensive about going back to Vegas and I can't wait to make sure that everybody has a good time in Vegas.
awesome. And this is Josh answering, guys. This isn't PCA answering, so
Yeah.
don't freak out when he says Las Vegas. Okay, so if you happen to be in the New Orleans camp, offshoot of this question, what was your favorite meal last year in New Orleans? Where was it?
Commander's Palace. I went there before the show. Then we also had our staff dinner at the last day at a church, but I forget what that restaurant was called. That was very, very good. But I mean, you can't go wrong with the food in New Orleans. I mean, it really the everything from the Cafe Du Monde coffee and they really roll out the red carpet. I love those muffaletta sandwiches too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that, I could eat that every day.
yeah, they're pretty epic. Yeah, by far the best food I've eaten at a PCA, which is saying something to your point about Las Vegas being the best of everything. The food last year was just impeccable. So, uh, trade show floor, big booths or smaller boutique booths?
I like I like the smaller boutique booths. I really do, and I think that it's and look, there's no real rhyme or reason. I think the smaller boost means that there's new companies entering the market. That's why I give that response. That doesn't draw away from like when a booth has an experience, like Drew Estate walking, through that tour.
Oh yeah, that was
If
super
you do
cool.
a big booth like that and you have some type of activation, that's incredible. So like I think the booths that are large they need to have some type of activation. You can't just have a space that, you want a lot of people to come. I get it, you're doing meetings and stuff like that, but doing something where, education, you might have TVs or even Toscano, there I would say more of a small booth, but they have the rollers in front. Like
Yeah.
I like booths large or small that have an activation.
Is it fair to say that you prefer intimacy over like, flash and bang?
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think that's fair.
Okay. Um, yeah, this one might be the toughest one yet. The buying floor, or education sessions.
I think the buying floor, look, I think with our trade show and the how it's set up, I would like to do more education. I think eventually in the future we want to have a dedicated conference that might not necessarily be tied to the trade show because there's so much else going on. So, I think we're purposely limited on educational offerings, not to draw away from the buying side of things because it is critically important. That's why people exhibit. That's why retailers go to get, deals, to get product. And we don't want to draw away from that. The education to me is a 365 program that we have to, there has to be an educational component to everything, including the trade show. But it isn't the focal point.
Gotcha. All right, from the industry perspective. Now, this is not what's more important. This isn't what PCA deems is more important. This is Joshua Bursky. Where do you like to roll your sleeves up and go to battle the most? Do you prefer state battles or federal?
Federal by far.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget how successful you were on the Hill. And what was that? God bless, my notes are terrible this time, Josh. But what was that list that you made consecutive years as being a top lobbyist on the Hill?
Yeah, the Hill, their newspaper, released that, and I love federal. Like, it's the only reason why I live in DC for the most part. I mean, our office is there. This is the epicenter, and like, there's a lot of good things going on in the states and challenges in the states, and like, Glenn covers a ton of ground, and I'm continually impressed by the level of output that he's able to do year after year. But I view DC as kind of like the epicenter of lobbying. Like, it's the major leagues, and I got to go to the Hill tomorrow for a meeting, and there's congressional offices, one of which I'm going to tomorrow, that we're going to light up cigars in the office. To me, that's the coolest thing in the world. Like, there's no better place to, talk politics and hash out, how strategies can work than over a cigar in the United States Capitol. Now, did I think 15 years ago, as a political science student, I would be doing that? Absolutely not. So, those are the types of days where you're like, you know what? No matter the stress, no matter the challenges, it feels worth it. And I'm not a huge DC fan, despite living here and having businesses and kind of put roots. But the one piece of DC that I really enjoy is the advocacy component.
Where did you feel like you had the best relationships, the Senate or the House?
House for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, and then this is my last question. And I've seen you smoke both. So I mean, do you prefer what we would consider more traditionally the aficionado vitolas that exist, Corona Gordas, Coronas, Robustos, the smaller vitolas, or do you prefer a larger smoke like a Toro or Churchill?
So I rotate back and forth. I'm on the small Vitola kick because it's colder. But like when I was in Miami this past weekend, I was going for the, Churchills and Toros. But like, typically I wake up like 6 o'clock. My first cigar is at 7 on my walk to the office, and it's usually a Robusto. But like, if I get anything new, that usurps it. So like, if there's something new in my that I got, I purchased, like, I'm gonna smoke back to back those. The two boxes that I just got are the off menu knuckle sandwich and the Apollina LFD. Now, a box of 20, I will, in 3 or 4 days' time, smoke 50% of both of those.
Awesome.
I don't save cigars either, too. Like, people have given me rare cigar, I smoke them. Like, my humidor has really run-of-the-mill stuff.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that once how you burn through your stuff, which I've always given props to people who do that. That's something that I've Pete Johnson has told me time and time again. He's like, smoke it, man. Don't save it. Like you can't take it with you, you know. And I just there's a part of me that's doing a little bit more smoking of the rarer stuff that I have. And I smoke a lot of stuff. So, but there's also a part of me that's also a collector. So it's kind of like it's really hard.
I love going with a group of 4 or 5 friends and opening a box and, hey, grab one, grab one. Like, to me, that that's a perk of the job. For me, is like, if I want to smoke something, if I want a cigar, I have an office full of cigars. I have several personal humidors full of cigars. I'm not going to run out of cigars. But the newer stuff, and what people are trying, and different taste, well, like things like I was given a box in Dubai of a cigar company that I had not heard of before. And that was going there and bringing it back from Dubai and saying, hey, to a couple of my close friends, try this. This was unique. The packaging's great. I hope they come over to, New Orleans this year and exhibit. That to me is very rewarding part of the job is being able to share cigars with people, other consumers, or even go, I want to be very aware of what's in the marketplace. So if I go to a cigar lounge and I'm sitting there with three or four customers and I see something on the shelf, I'm trying to drive sales even for the retailer that's there. I see what they're smoking. I'll say to them like, "Hey, well, have you tried this?" So, that's kind of a fun exercise for me when I'm in a lounge.
Look, I know you visit tons of shops as part of your job and everything, and you want to spread the love around. But what is your home shop? Where do you go, regularly from at home?
So I have two close friends that normally buy from W. Curtis Drapers. Typically, I don't get downtown to that part, so that's kind of where I buy a lot of my cigars from. But I usually I'm smoking at the office or on the patio of my restaurant. So, like in terms of home shops, like before I moved downtown DC near the office. I used to go to Old Virginia a lot. And I still buy cigars and go to Old Virginia occasionally. It's just because there's not really a ton of stores or lounges in DC. W. Curtis Draper, you can't, they're with their landlord, they don't smoke inside anymore. So, like Shelley's is there. Georgetown Tobacco is kind of grab and go now. So, like, I buy from a lot of shops, but I don't really smoke into many places. I need to do a better job of, Petworth Cigars is here. I do go to the Clayton, which is a members club. They have one in Chicago, DC, and they're opening in Miami. So I'll go there once or twice a week as a member there.
So, only two more questions, Josh, before I let you go. And I thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to speak with you tonight. This next segment is brought to you by Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than just a physical place; it could be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Mo Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So it sounds like to me that your refuge is this walk every morning to the office and the Robusto that you light up and smoke. Um, Look, this is a daily ritual for you, so I know it's kind of hard to pick one, but what's a recent walk to work that gave you a lot of moments of reflection? And also, what were you smoking and what were you thinking about?
Hmm. So I would say in smoking, it was probably my favorite cigar, which is a Padron 1926. Like if I'm stuck on a desert island, that's the cigar that I want. Um, and Robusto, Maduro, and I was smoking that, walking, kind of thinking about the year and planning. And one of the things that for this year, because of the doctoral program, because of everything with the association, I'm 150 times more organized this year than I was last year. And I have to. Like, I know my schedule pretty much all the way, like, especially travel schedule for the next 8 months. Every hotel, every flight, everything is, there'll be things that get adjusted here and there. But that walk was kind of just planning what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And also, and it was the day that we had our first staff call. We have a weekly staff call, and I added one. It was January 5th. And I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a rah-rah speech to the entire team. And we just had Leslie, who also was a new hire that we made this year and announced. So kind of, welcome her and then kind of say, here's the goals for the year. And like, I went on a little bit of a tangent, like, we don't want to settle for mediocrity. We have to up the ante. We need to make sure that we're improving. And what are your goals? What do you want to see here? And I said, my goals, for instance, and I also talked about, look, these are some mistakes that I made or things that I don't think were quite right as the leader for looking at 2025. And I was very open and honest and said, this is what I want to achieve. And I said, my biggest success measure for next year is if everybody on this call is on this call next year. One of the things that the association has had difficulty in the past is turnover of staff. And like, I want to create an environment where people are proud of their work product. They're successful. We're being successful and responsive to members on a consistent basis, but they feel proud in what they're producing. And I think that we've done a lot in that area. And that's another one of those like behind the scenes things that, membership don't necessarily see all the time or the public see all the time is that, if there's an issue or that people are getting stressed or there's too much, I want to come in and help them. I don't care if I have to take out trash or if I have to answer phone calls. Like, I don't have any ego when it comes to what needs to get done for the association. So that was kind of a long-winded answer of my walk and my contemplation.
Nice. All right, we've come to that time. Josh, it's the last question of the evening, which is always brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. It's our curveball segment. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter since the company's inception. Steve Sock has been knocking them out of the park. Count them up. It's been a decade, 10 consecutive years, the consensus top three. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. Will he make it 11 years? We'll find out in just a few days. So, Josh, there's this trend going on in social media right now, viral trend of videos. You may have seen a couple where, it's some goes along the lines of, hey, you're going to be presented with this opportunity. You're a kid, you know, X year, in a few short years, you're going to be presented with this opportunity. It's important that you listen to it. And then it basically shows present day, whatever that particular opportunity or whatever's going on in that person's life. It's this trend going on in social media right now. So, in light of what you were kind of saying, just a few moments ago, as a political science student, when you were first in college, you could never imagine that you'd be in offices on the Hill and smoking cigars and everything. You know, I want to kind of reframe this question. Obviously, you take the opportunity, and you'd end up to where you are today and everything. But what's something, if you could go back and tell Joshua Habursky sitting in those political science classes in college, hey, this challenge is going to come up, and it's important that you learn this lesson from it. What lesson would that be?
I think really the lesson is like empathy and communication. Um, we can learn a lot from history. I know like you like history, I like history. And I think unfortunately, like, people with a lot of understanding of what has happened in the past can inform future decisions. And being able to communicate that is difficult. I've lived in DC now for 13 years. I've seen, you know, highly contentious debates, people that don't like each other, and like to me, like I'm not very partisan. I'm not like, you can't really put a mold on it, but like getting people to understand the context of what frames someone's decision and why the past history has influenced their way of thinking, their worldview, and understanding, even if you don't agree with it, understanding where they're coming from. I think people can have much better conversations and come to consensus in a much better way. And like, I think or like my biggest concern is like we get so focused in our day to day. Like I have blinders on about cigar policy. There's a lot of issues out there that are very impactful, and like I just don't know what's going on. I want to be more well informed on some of these things. Like, I don't really get involved in what's going on outside of the United States unless there's a tangential effect on the cigar industry. There's just so much information out there
Hmm.
that it's an overload. And like, social media trends, you mentioned that. One of my things this new year, I can't doom scroll. It's a waste of time. Like I read that like 5 a.m. Book about best practices as a leader, and like one of the things that I'm trying to do is get off social media and seeing like the vitriol and like the extremes
Hmm.
on things. So I think the lesson learned is like, yes, study the books and gain the knowledge about historical impacts. Let that inform the future, but communicate that and have conversations in a way that you understand who you're sitting across the table from.
Yeah, I think, overall as an industry, it's really important that we stay grounded in the center. This is truly a bipartisan issue, and it's easy. Look, it's easy to be tempted. Like, we're talking about politics, right? And it's easy to be tempted to run one direction or the other because that's where the money is, right? If we, if money is the sole thing that we're after, and it's not, we thrive on, donations and memberships and things like that. So money is important in order for us to fight our battles and go after the advocacy that we need to. It's really easy to it's really easy to probably be lured by one side or the other because that's where the money's at. But I think it's
Yeah.
very important that we stay grounded in the center. And I think that, um, from your predecessor, Scott, to you, Josh, I think that's something that from my perspective, that I've always felt that you guys have done a really good job at. It's easy to kind of look to one particular direction as a adversary and one the other protection as particular an ally, and it's really not that black and white. It's really not that black and white, and I think you guys have done a really good job of spotlighting that and also making friends on both sides of the aisle, which is not easy. Not easy in this political climate. So kudos to you on that. And I love hearing that as your answer. Makes me feel good about my perspective. Makes me feel good about the leadership that you're exemplifying for our organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, I appreciate everyone staying up late with us. It's been fantastic talking with Josh here, and thank you so much for staying up late with us and all the likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. We really do appreciate it. If you're tuning in later, you can check us out on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell as well, so that way you get notified as videos get published. And you can also check us out live on Facebook as we broadcast nearly every Sunday night at 9:30 Eastern. Excuse me, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. And our video broadcast on YouTube and Facebook is courtesy of our good friends at Foundation Cigars. Nick Melillo began his career in the cigar industry at the age of 18, working in a cigar shop, the Calabash shop. By the way, it was legal back then for an 18-year-old to be working in a tobacco shop. It's important to note that in his home state of Connecticut. He went on to work for a well-known cigar company in Drew Estate, where he developed some of the most popular blends there. In 2015, he started the Foundation Cigar Company to create a unique and flavorful cigars that appeal from everyone, from the novice to the most experienced smoker. So congratulations on 10 years of Foundation Cigar. This is his 11th year coming into 2026 to Nick Melillo. And if you are listening to us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. Tonight's audio broadcast is courtesy of our friends at Grand Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. Thanks to our good friends at Grand Habano. We appreciate constructive criticism here at ELOSOFUMARTAKES, just like the constructive criticism at PCA. It's important to get those opinions, and I appreciate all of them. So if you are going to leave me constructive feedback, please do so. So I don't care if you love me, hate me, or somewhere in the middle. Make sure that feedback is constructive, and it doesn't even have to be well written. To the guy who said that my audio level sucked and gave me a 1-star review, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you can hear me now, and you are still listening. As I say every week, to the guy who gave me a 1-star review and left it blank, fuck you. Got nothing for you. Can't help you. Can't improve if you don't tell me how to. So, look, I've only done 352 of these guys. I can only go up from here, and that's the plan. We've got so much more to cover and so much more to do. We've got some great shows planned for you in the next few weeks and years, coming into this year's PCA later this year as well too. So it'll be exciting. So you'll definitely want to tune in for our upcoming shows. As I said before, appreciate all those likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. I'm Barry Duplessis, live from the Alec Bradley studio of Hazel, Texas. He's Joshua Habursky of the PCA. Guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.